Hi, welcome back to CoderX Ankit and welcome back to the Spring Security course. In the previous video, we have learned that what to customize and what do you mean by user details service and a password encoder component, right? In this video, we are going to learn overriding default configuration in a Spring Security. Like when you apply or you say when you implement Spring Security in your Spring Boot project, then it is already configured but it is not fit for the production level application. You got it? So with default configuration you can't achieve great things as part of your security or as part of your application security in your Spring Boot project. So here we are going to see that how we can configure based upon our requirements. Okay, so we will override those default configuration and implement our own customized implementation of Spring Security. That's it. So see, first of all, we will customize user details service. As you know, user details service is that component which is responsible for loading the user specific data which is mainly used during authentication. So if suppose any user wants to be authenticated, any request is coming and wants to be authenticated, then from where it gathered, like from where the Spring Security will get those user details data. Let's say what is the username, what is the password, from where? From this user details service. So user details service is that component which is responsible for loading the user specific data which is mainly used during authentication, right? The next point is to use a custom implementation. Suppose you want to use this user detail service as a customized way. Okay, then define a configuration class and annotate it with @configuration. Override user detail service, yes. So one by one we will do it, but you just see here what I'm trying to say. We have user detail service component. Which component was user details service? You see, go to user details service, Spring Security. This user detail service is used by the authentication provider, or say let's say any authentication provider, for retrieving username, password, okay, and other attributes for authenticating with a username and password, right? So you see, Spring Security provides in-memory user details manager, okay, JDBC caching implementation of user detail service. There are so let me open this user details service API docs. Open it. You see, this is interface user detail service, all known implementation classes. You see here, public interface user detail service, core interface which loads the user specific data. I am not saying, who is saying? The Spring docs itself. It is saying na, hey, this is the core interface which loads the user specific data in your Spring Boot, Spring Security configured application. You got it now. So when you see it, it is one interface, boss. You can say this is interface array. If this is interface, then how the object will be created? Then it's obvious. The object of implementation class will be created, right? So it has some implementation classes already, like caching user detail service. It will gather the user details from cached, right? In memory user details manager. This in memory user details manager means what? Array. During the app memory, when app is executing, so in memory, okay, the app memory area, the shared memory, okay, of your application. There for temporary period, what we do, we store some data. So if you store some data in memory, you say, generally we say in memory, right? So in memory user details manager, right? JDBC.impl, JDBC user details manager, LDAP user details. LDAP user details service is one of the most popular, one of the most useful things here. This LDAP user details manager and LDAP user details service. We will see it in further upcoming videos. Okay, just see here. This is in memory user details manager. You got it. This in-memory user details manager is good for the development and testing purposes, but not fit for the production level applications, because in production level application we deal with the database, right? And if you as a person, or let's say if I am giving any request, then my request must be authenticated. If I am a user, if I am giving some like user password, okay, just say, then my app will try to gather the data from where. You got it. It will try to load the user information and try to match this, right? So this user details service component is used by authentication provider. You got it, right now, boss? So here you see caching, user details service, in memory user details manager. So we will see here right now in memory user details manager, and first of all we will customize this user details service. You got it. So one component is ready. If your Spring Boot application has configured the, or let's say if you have added the dependency of a Spring Boot starter security, you got it, then automatically these components will be created internally. Fine. So what you do basically is, this is the user details service, right? Based upon the in-memory user details manager, there will be one user set already, user and password, the same password that is generated and printing in the console. Here, let me rerun the application and show you. This is my Spring Boot application which we have already configured and played with it in the earlier videos, right? So right click, run as, and then say Spring Boot app, and let me open Postman meanwhile. Okay, so here it is opening. Let me open it and go to the Spring Security. Yes, hello. You see localhost :8080/welcome. Okay, not a problem. Then see, boss, you just to go here and say, go to here and say, here you see the using generated security password. Here it is generating one password, right? And the default user is user. You already know. So what we do basically, if you want to hit the URL, if this application is running, and say this is the get mapping, and say this /welcome, if you want to hit this endpoint, and now suppose I am hitting this endpoint. Now you see in the authorization no auth headers, it is not any authorization header or anything we have passed, right? So just send it, and you see, wait, this is 401 unauthorized. The user the request is unauthenticated. Pass correct user details. You got it. So what we do basically is, now, so this we pass the authorization header and the value for that basic is like the, you got it now, bearer, right? So authorization header we need to pass the value. You got it. So here it is passed in base 64 encoded value. So I will just search for base 64 encoded. You pass it. Okay, base 64 encoder. Go here. Write user colon your password. So my password here is this one. Okay, so copy this, paste it, and say on encode, and then if the value is encoded, copy this to clipboard, and then come here, write, hey, I want to use one header, that is authorization, and then I will just, not the bearer here, if I have spoken bearer in just a few 5-10 seconds ago, I'm really sorry, it is basic, not the bearer, boss. So what you write here, basic, you write basic, and then this encoded value, and then pass it. Now see, when you pass it, if the username and password is correct, then it is coming 200. Okay, why? Because internally in user details manager, user is there, user as user, and password as this encoded password is already attached. So you already know about the user details and password encoder in the previous video, right? Now see here what we need to do basically. Now the default value is getting used by the Spring Boot, like the username is user and the password is this encoded password. Now I want to customize it. I as a person, I as a programmer want to customize it. How we can do it? Very simple, boss. See this slide, and yeah, come here. So to use a custom implementation, define a configuration class, annotate it with @configuration. Let's do it a step by step. So what we will do, we are going to give our own user details, right? So just say package, I will be, and let me copy paste it. Okay, just copy the project and paste the project. Let's say this is Spring Security overriding default configuration. Okay, let's say overriding default config, overriding configuration. Okay, overriding config, just sir. Okay, just paste it. Let it configure first. Okay, if the application is now configured, then stop the application first which is already running. Now come here, now create one package. So package com.coderx ankit dot, then spring security dot config. Why? Just because if I take this package name, automatically this will be scanned, because we are not using any explicit component scanning, right? You see it is the default scanning. So wherever this main file is there, so it is scanning all its sub packages and packages, right? That's the whole important point here. So go to config, right click new and say, hey, I want to create one class. Say my project config, right? And then say this is @configuration. This is @configuration. Fine. So if this is configuration, now what you need user details service, right? So I will create one bean. You got it. See override. See here, override user details service, define a bean of type user details service using in-memory user details manager. So I'm using in-memory user details manager as its implementation, right? So what we will do is say, hey, I want one bean, right? So how you define bean already you know, right? How was so public, I want user details service bean, user details service, this bean. Okay, I want to declare this class as bean and just say user details service. Fine boss, and here it is, say @bean. Okay, this is the bean. Now this user details service, what should we return? Array, we should return one of its implementing class object. Okay, so return what boss? Return which one, which class object or which object? Okay, so return the in memory user details manager class object. Simple, we need to return this. Okay, so now if before this we need to configure one user, right? We need to pass the value of user. So if we go here in memory user details manager, let's say I want to return it. Okay, so let's say return a new in memory user details manager. If you write like this simply, now this in memory user details object manager this in memory user details manager object will be created, but we have not configured any user. How we can say? Now let me open it for you. Let me just go here, in memory user details manager. This is the class, so the constructor is there, so the object will be created, right? The object will be created easily. But you know, if this method runs load user by username, then nothing will come, because you have not set any username. You see, you have not set any username, and this load user by username internally what is happening, boss? Array, authentication provider is using these what you can say components, na boss. What I'm saying, have you forgotten the architecture? You see, this is our architecture, right? Oh, where it is, here it is, someone this slide. Okay, slide. So if you see, just see here, authentication provider is using the user details and password encoder. Now how this user details will be used? Okay, so with the user details service, boss, either here user details service will be there. Okay, user details service. So if you say here, go here and say user details service. Okay, if here you say user details service, and this in memory user details manager is there, and in memory user details manager will be created. But how the user will be loaded to authenticated or for authentication, right? How was by calling this method internally load user by username, right? But this method because we are not passing any user value username. See here a string username it is demanding na, right? And what is the return type? User details. You see interface user details, you got it? It demands user details, right? So this is interface user details. Now if this is the user details, then again here one user is there, which is the implementing class of this user details interface. So when you open this user, this means what? Models core user information retrieved by a user details service. So it models the core user information. This object keeps, in simple language you can say, this user class object keeps the data, keeps the user object keeps the data of the user that is going to be authenticated. In which object? This user class object. Okay, and when user details service comes into the picture, it says, hey dear user class object, please give me the data. That's the simple point. So internally user details service, okay, user details service retrieve the user information from this user object. It means the whole game is there to create the user class object as well as of right now, right? So if user class object is not created, of if any user is not created, then how you can keep the data? It means user must be there, right? So go to its constructor and say, see here it is saying na, hey, pass the username, pass the password, boolean enabled, boolean account expired, whatever these credentials you want to pass, anything, right? And one more important point, you just see all the methods. I don't want to work with this constructor. It is taking it's too much, right? So I will prefer methods over here, right? So when you go here, you see this is okay. You see this is user. You see it has some method, a static user dot user builder, like creates a user builder. Okay, some more will be there with the username. Okay, how can I say? Search for with username. You see user dot user builder with the username. This is the static user builder. See user dot user builder is one class. Array static class it is na boss. User dot user builder is the static class. Now just don't go too much deep into the design patterns that is happening inside this Spring Boot or Spring framework here. Okay, so just be here with me that okay, I have one class, right? I have one class that is user dot builder. Now if with user dot builder, you see there are many methods over here, right? Again when you just go, can you use the with username, you see with username here it is available or not. So string username, just pass the string username, creates user builder with a specified username, right? So basically if we want to build one user, then how boss? So just write here, say hey user dot with username, okay, call the, like give any value, let's say Ankit, and then say hey I want also dot password, because there will be another method, let's say password. You see here password, not the get password. I will be only with password. You see there are examples also given. See user dot with, and this is the with default password encoder, but I'm not using default password encoder. Okay, I will not use any kind of password encoder. You just see here user dot with username, something like this, and then password, and then roles, and then build. Okay, so just write with username Ankit, then that say dot password, write your custom password, whatever you want to say, and then say, hey, I want to see give the credentials, right? Set, or let's say, what was the method name? Credential roles. Here you can see the roles, right? And here if you just see credentials, you must be is credentials somewhere. Array, what's the method name, boss? Here it is. I hope I'm just sleeping away from my tongue. Dot authorities. Yeah, so you just say dot authorities. What are the authorities? So simple. Let's say this user can only read into my project, and say dot, and what you say here, build. Okay, so it is building one user detail. This build method returns user details. See, this build method returns user details, right? So one user details is created now. Just say user details. I'm writing some user details. Now you have this user details. All right, now I can say that, okay, I have one user details. It means inside this user details object I have one user information with username this, password this, and authority this, right? Correct. Now what next was, so when you go in memory details manager, okay, just see the in memory user details manager. Let me open this and go to the constructor. Here can you see in memory user details manager, can you see it is saying, hey, unlimited or any number of user details object you can pass here. It means it is saying, oh, in this memory you can pass any user information, right? Okay, so let's say here I'm passing one user details. So basically when you pass and when you use this constructor, this is the constructor now, right? So if you create the object of in memory user details manager with this, you got it. If you create the in memory user details manager with this constructor, then how, boss? Then simply in memory user details manager, and here it is saying, hey, pass one user details simply. So pass here as well. We have already user details here. Now just pass user details. That's it, boss. That's and nothing else. Okay, now what next? You see, we need to pass here. So we added one user details object, and we have created the in memory user details manager object, right? And return that. Now add password encoder to match passwords correctly. Declare a bean of type password encoder. Use no op password encoder is suitable for testing but not for production. So when we are working with this user details information, then it is must that we also need to work with the password things. So to verify the password that a user is giving in the request, it means like we as a Spring Boot project, it will try to verify the password as well, then only it will be authenticated, right? So for that it uses one password authenticator, right? But here we have again the password authenticator, password encoder. Okay, password encoder component, you got it. So let me write password encoder component, password encoder API docs. Let me search for it. Go here, say this is the interface, right? So if this is interface, then how the object will be created? One of its implementing classes object, right? Now see, bcrypt password encoder is there, delegation password encoder is there. So it depends upon what you want to choose and what are the requirements of your project. So yeah, we will try to implement some of them in the coming videos, but not in the same video. We are not going to do that, yes, right? Because our whole aim is to understand the user details service and password encoder as part of customizing our security configurations, right? So here when you just see what I'm trying to say, use no op just for right now. Please use no op password encoder. So no op password encoder is just the very simplest one, and it doesn't has and doesn't encode the password, it will keep the password as plain text. That's the whole important point here. So see, this is deprecated, but this password encoder is not secure. Instead use an adaptive one. Yeah, so for the production level, if we are definitely going to use bcrypt password or bkdf2 password encoder or a script, but we this will be not used for the production ready applications. Right now, when this password, like now why it is deprecated, so see here, there are no plans to remove this, it is just deprecated. You see, it is deprecated to indicate that yeah, this is a legacy implementation and using it is considered insecure. That simple is the meaning of this deprecation. Not it doesn't mean like okay, no op password encoder will be removed. It's just to symbolize that hey, please do not use it. That's the whole important point. Yeah, so in, of course, in production, for making our project go in production, we don't use this no op password encoder, but for the testing and development purposes we can happily use it. So here let me use it and try. So I will be creating one bean again, right? So because password encoder is one another component na, and it must be configured as bean. So go to your configuration class and say hey, I want one another bean. So let's say public, and then again now bean of which type, boss? So you can keep any of the implementation classes of this password encoder na. You got it or not, boss? You got it or not? Or you can keep the reference type like this also. So say hey, I want to use the password encoder as bean. So return type will be password encoder, and say password encoder, something like this, and simply you can return one of its implementing class, right, object. So simply I'm using no op password encoder. So go to the constructor, or you see this doesn't have any constructor, right? And if this not have any constructor, then go to its method and say this is the get instance, right? You see get instance. Now this is static password encoder get instance. So it means it will give you the instance of no op password encoder simply. So I will write hey, return no op password encoder dot get instance. Very simple, boss, very simple, right? And mark this method as @bean method, because yeah, we need to return, or we need to manage this as spring bean object, right? Now I have configured this as per our requirement for just this example, and let's try to rerun the project and see if our given password and username is working or not, right? We need to check it out, right? So right click on this project, say run as, and say Spring Boot app, and that's it. You just see here and let it run first, and then we will see. Now see the default password that was printing in the previous example, now it's not printing, right? Why? Because we have just configured the password and this user details based upon our requirement with the help of this user details service component and password encoder component, right? Now let's try and go to the application. Now hit it. Okay, hit it. Now see, this is 401 unauthorized. When you just pass or don't pass any authentication header here also. Now just run it again, 401 unauthorized. Now how will you pass the username and which one, boss? The password. So the username and password will be again passed in the authorization header as what? Base 64 encoded value. Array, this authorization, this is the part of your HTTP things na, HTTP request things na, this is the header na. So this header itself, not the Spring project, sorry, not the Spring Boot, not the Spring Boot demands, but the this is the authorization value, and the authorization value is in itself a base 64 encoded value, not the Spring Boot value. You got it? So basically you just pass the authorization header. Okay, so how? Base 64 encoded value followed simply like username and right? So go here, say hey, I want to say my username is Ankit, right? You see here we have already configured, yeah, username Ankit, and then password is password, right? My password is not hashed or encoded, so I will simply write my password simply as plain text 123, simple. And then say hey, encode this, and now get this encoded value, copy to clipboard, and now go to the postman and say hey, I want to hit this basic, and write the basic here as value and space and then encoded value, and then send it, and you see the magic happens. You got it. Welcome dear user. Now this this request, now you can say this user is authenticated. You got it now. So this user is now authenticated. Fine. Now so you got it with the help of this, user details service, how you can configure your user information, your user details, right? And see, suppose I want another user. Okay, so just create one more user details object. Okay, one user details object, and again, so say I want to create user with username, and say here hey, this is Amit, and say dot password. You just write Amit @123, and just go and say authorities, and just say hey, your authorities will be only read as well, and say dot build, and then return the this user details object, user details 2. Okay, and can you pass more than one user details? Yes, you can pass as many. You can see now in this user details in memory user details manager constructor, this is triple dot, like you can pass any number of arguments right here as user details. So user details comma, let me pass the user details 2. You got it. Now save it and rerun the project. So if I rerun the project and I want to continue with, let's say Ankit, first I will again rerun the rechecking with the Ankit and Ankit @123. So go to the go to here and say hey, I want to encode the value. So again, if you are encoding the same value, you will get the same encoded version. Okay, you say here is the value, let me encode it. So encode it, simply you got the same encoded value. Oh, I don't want this. Right click and copy this, go here, go to authorization, say here this is no authorized, and say headers. Here is the headers, here is the authorization, here is the basic, then a space, then the space. Of course it is same because we are just keeping Ankit : Ankit @123. So see the magic 2001. If any wrong value, let's say something, okay, now this will not be authenticated, right? Now let's try with some another value. Okay, let's try with some another value. Let's say I am just pushing here Manish. Okay, Manish and : so now see, I'm just saying encode this, encoded. Okay, now copy this and say paste the value here. Again you see 401 unauthorized, so this user is not there in the in memory now. Why? Which user is there? Ankit and Amit, only these users, and that too if we give the correct username and password, then it will happen, right? So let me go and say hey, this time I want to authenticate with Amit, so I will convert this Amit : Amit @123 into the encoded form, right? Encoded format. Okay, so now copy this encoded value and then go here and pass this, paste it. Okay, and save it. Now see, it is saying 2001 welcome dear user. So this is the value for the Amit. So it is now hitting the endpoint, it is authenticating the request. It means here our user is authenticated. So you can create as many objects as you want in the user details like as a object of user details, right? You can create as many objects as you want, but this is not really required in the production level applications. You got it? So because you don't usually keep the object of these users in memory, you basically keep all the user base, all the user information in all the user data in your database side, right? So from there we will collect. You got it? From there we will collect. So definitely we will see it in further videos. So in this video I think it's fine. So we have covered that how we can customize the user detail service and password encoder, and then yeah, we have fine. So in the next video we will discuss customizing authentication and authorization with security filter chain. So in this video I think this is enough, and in the next lecture and the next video we will discuss this one. Okay, customizing authentication and authorization with security filter chain. Thank you so much for watching these videos. Please I will definitely not gonna edit too much this video. Video will be raw like this. And yeah, please write down in the comments what your feedbacks are. And yeah, that's it. Keep watching, keep learning, and keep coding. Thank you so much for watching this video till then. Bye bye.